Here's a question. So, do we really think BMW is going to change the direction of fashion of motor vehicles with the i3? I picked one up this weekend. I was very lucky to get one of the first ones into the US actually. And I have to say, it's a very, very sort of forward thinking kind of a design. Think about automotive design over the last few centuries, right? Few centuries, decades even. Um, there's been a couple of trends back and forth, between soft and curvy and sharp and edgy. But there's been a few sort of underlying trends that have been pretty persistent and moving in one direction. Uh, the thickness of tyres, the size of wheels, and the extraordinary size of exhaust pipes, which I always think kind of ironic, really, because that's kind of the automotive equivalent of putting a giant bullseye on the back of your trousers, right? It's where the poop comes out. I'm not sure why people are so excited about it. But all of those attributes are actually, it turns out, kind of counter to, or pretty much counter to making, a good car. Perhaps with the exception of big wheels. But big wheels do mean usually, thinner tyres, lower profile, which means harder and more expensive, more difficult to manufacture. Fatter exhaust pipes actually can be counterintuitive to performance. I don't know if you've ever followed behind, one of these crossover SUVs with the giant pipes coming out the back and sort of stared into the back of them. I get a chance to do that, a lot of that, driving the Tesla roads because you're very low down. You can often see into these exhausts, and what you actually see is this huge pipe going for about 1.5 feet, and then a tiny little sort of not even drain pipe kind of width. It's like, an inch or so, which is basically what the car needs to create back pressure to do all this sort of cylinder purging that technology that all goes on to make cars efficient. But there seems to be this inexorable move to bigger. Now, as EVers, you are all excited about having a car with no tailpipe, so that's that piece taken care of. But I think the next obstacle might just be fat tyres. So if you've seen a picture of the i3, you'll notice that you'll never see a photograph of an i3 from BMW or from one of the dealers with the wheels turned. And the reason for that is very, very simple. They are 155 section tyres on the front. Now, the last time I had 155 section tyres was on my mum's Ford Escort back in the 80s. It had a 1.1 litre engine, it had no go, and it had no need of any kind of fat tyres for grip. But I was also sort of surprised at the tyres on the Tesla Roadster, for example. They're not very wide, certainly not as wide as, say, a Porsche 911 or even, a Nissan, a fancy posh Nissan. It seems that for efficiency and for making a really good car, you actually need really narrow tyres, low rolling resistance. But the sacrifice we've always assumed is grip. Just as we've always assumed that not having an engine that makes a lot of noise means it's not going to be powerful. We're all driving electrics. We know that that's not true. It turns out that having narrow tyres doesn't seem to be a bad thing at all. And actually, I've had a lot of positive, comments on those big wheels on the i3, and the focus seems to have shifted away from the narrow tyres. And I think there might be a little bit of a fashionable kind of angle that we can jump into and sort of focus on, that narrow is thin and slender and appropriate. We all have these sort of controls in our psyche that can spot things that have just gone too far. I mean, we've all seen a collagen job that just goes way over the top, or Botox that looks freaky. We know when enhancement goes too far, and I wonder if we've got to that point with automobiles. The BMW i3 shows a design that looks terribly, terribly familiar. I've seen it on sketches drawn by futuristic-minded designers over the last couple of decades, penning what a car might look like. The Audi TT tended to look a bit like an i3, and when it was sort of first penned, big wheels and very, sort of teardrop kind of a shape. BMW seems to have put it on the road. And so far, people are giving it a thumbs up. What do you think? I mean, are we starting to recognize that a truly energy efficient design is actually cool and sexy? Do you think it'll stick? Do you think anybody else will go for it? Or is it just us EV nerds? Nerds is in fashion as well. What do you think?